They say a dog is man's best friend. But what happens when the world tries to tear that friend away from you? Anne labels him a threat. The mist hit his eyes before I even realized what was happening. 1 second, my service dog Teddy was sitting calmly at my side, tail wagging gently, nose twitching at the morning air. The next second, he was yelping in agony. The HOA president, Karen Jordan, had walked right up in front of 3 police officers and unloaded a can of citronella spray into his face. I'll never forget the sound Teddy made. A sound so raw, so confused, it felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped something out of me. He pawed frantically at his face, stumbling backward. His golden fur shook with panic as he tried to bury his head into the wet grass, trying to escape the chemical burning through his eyes. I dropped to my knees. "Teddy? Hey! Hey! I'm here!" I whispered, voice trembling, every nerve in my body screaming to explode. "Stay with me, boy. You're okay." But he wasn't okay. His eyes were red and watering, his whimpers slicing through me like shrapnel. I could already smell the acrid sting of whatever Karen had sprayed. It wasn't citronella. It was something harsher, something toxic. Above me, Karen stood with the canister still raised, smug and unflinching. "I was defending myself," she said loudly, theatrically, for the benefit of the officers and the neighbors now peeking from behind curtains. "That animal lunged at me. You all saw it." I slowly stood, heart pounding, blood roaring in my ears. The world narrowed, my fists clenched. "You just assaulted a federally protected service dog," I said, voice low, deadly calm. "In front of witnesses, in front of the police." Officer Miller stepped forward, tension in his jaw. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to hand me that spray." "Oh, please," Karen scoffed, waving her hand like she'd swatted a fly. "It's harmless, citronella, completely legal, and that animal is dangerous. You need to call animal control, have him put down. He barked at me last week and Teddy barked once," I cut in. "When a truck backfired, it wasn't at you. He was grounding me. That's what he's trained to do." Karen's face twisted. "Grounding you? What does that even mean? Sounds like a fake disability to me." My jaw tightened. Teddy pressed his body against my leg, eyes still streaming, breathing shallow. "Sir," Officer Sanchez said softly, stepping beside me, "you need to flush his eyes. Here." He handed me a saline bottle. "We'll log this. We'll bag the spray can as evidence." Evidence! That word echoed in my head like a drumbeat. Karen's assault wasn't just cruelty. It was calculated. And this was only the beginning. The officers took our names, jotted a few notes, told her to go home, told me to maybe walk my dog on a different street next time, like that, would fix what just happened. I cradled Teddy's head in my lap, drizzling saline over his swollen eyes, whispering every soft word I could remember from war zones and wakeful nights. But the worst part, the part that made my skin go cold, was how calm Karen looked. Like this had gone exactly how she planned. She didn't flinch, didn't back down. She looked at me like she was daring me to fight back. Because she wasn't afraid. She had the rule book, the bylaws, the HOA cronies, the paper trail. She had the power. And I was just a guy with a scarred past and a dog who couldn't speak for himself. But here's the thing about people like Karen. They forget who they're dealing with. I didn't spend 2 decades learning how to survive sandstorms and sniper nests just to be broken by someone with a clipboard and a bottle of cheap perfume spray. Karen Jordan had just declared war, and she had no idea who she declared it on. Ever been judged before they even knew your story? Drop a comment. We're listening. They say the hardest part of war is not the bullets. It's what follows after. The silence, the ordinary. The weight of being home when your head is still thousands of miles away. That's what Teddy saved me from. My name is Jack Dalton. For most of my adult life, I worked with dogs trained to sniff out bombs, landmines, and death. I was a military K-9 handler. My partner in Afghanistan, a Belgian Malinois named Rex, once saved an entire convoy by detecting a pressure trigger buried 6 inches under gravel. He didn't survive the tour. I did. When I came home, the silence was deafening. The nights were loud. The days were too quiet. The 4th of July turned into a battlefield. Crowded stores felt like ambush zones. I started avoiding people, sounds, life. That's when Teddy came into my life. He was part of a program that matched veterans with service dogs specifically trained to help with PTSD. He wasn't built like Rex. No sharp ears, no piercing eyes, no tense posture. Teddy was a golden retriever, all soft fur and soulful brown eyes. But where Rex had been my fellow soldier, Teddy was my healer. His training was simple but life-saving. Deep pressure therapy when my breathing shifted, barrier positioning in crowds, alert barking when my stress spiked. He knew before I did when the darkness was coming, and when it came, he sat through it with me. No judgment, just presence. We'd been living in Greenfield Meadows for just under a year when Karen Jordan decided I didn't belong. It wasn't immediate. At first, it was just the stares. Karen ran the homeowners association like a monarch of mulch. She lived 2 houses down in a beige castle trimmed with identical rose bushes and a mailbox shaped like a miniature church. Her rules were legendary. No holiday decorations past 7 days. Lawn height capped at 2 inches. No basketball hoops in driveways. No laundry hung outside. No visible trash bins. And, God forbid your siding faded a shade below approved taupe. To be fair, I chose this place. I wanted quiet, structure. I thought I could blend in. But men like me, we never really blend. We carry something in our posture, a discipline, a stillness, a kind of quiet people don't know how to interpret. Karen interpreted it as threat. It started with letters. Dear Mr. Dalton, your garbage bins were placed on the curb more than 12 hours before pickup. This is a violation of Article 4B, Section 2. Future infractions may result in fines. Dear Mr. Dalton, your dog was observed sniffing a flower bed not located on your property. Please ensure he is kept on designated paths. Dear Mr. Dalton, a neighbor has raised concern over barking noises during daytime hours. Please be advised that repeated noise complaints can trigger disciplinary review. Each letter signed in bold script. Karen Jordan, President, Greenfield Meadows, HOA. Each letter more absurd than the last. I tried to ignore them. Teddy wasn't a barker, except when he had to be. He didn't dig, didn't run loose, didn't growl. His worst crime was occasionally laying in the sun with his belly up in public view. But Karen didn't care about facts. She cared about control. And I, a quiet man with scars and a service dog, represented something she couldn't control. Sometimes I'd catch her standing on her porch, arms folded, watching us walk past like we were invading troops. She never waved, never smiled, just stared, judged. One day she stopped me. Mr. Dalton, she said, stepping into my path, your dog is not appropriate for this community. Large breeds tend to make families nervous. He's a service dog, I replied evenly. He's protected by federal law. She sniffed. The law doesn't protect against fear. That was Karen's power. Fear, not just of dogs, but of change, of loss of control, of anything that didn't fit her pristine little worldview. And she ruled this community through that fear. The neighbors didn't speak up. Most avoided eye contact. I didn't blame them. Karen had fined a woman $300 for having a wind chime, audible from the sidewalk. Another family was forced to repaint their door because it wasn't HOA-approved subtle green. Compliance meant safety. But Teddy wasn't going to change his breed, and I wasn't going to move just because a petty dictator in a floral blouse decided we were unfit. So we stayed. We kept walking, kept to ourselves. Until yesterday, when a delivery truck backfired and Teddy let out a single sharp bark, and Karen saw her opening. She turned a bark into an act of violence. She summoned police. And when their presence didn't satisfy her thirst for dominance, she took out that spray and hurt my dog in front of them, then lied, right to their faces, said he lunged, said she feared for her life. And here's what scares me most. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was building a paper trail, laying groundwork, a barking complaint here, a menacing presence there, all of it slowly constructing a narrative that would let her do the unthinkable, get Teddy labeled a danger, get him taken away, put down. That's not paranoia, that's strategy. Karen wasn't a bored housewife with a superiority complex. She was a tactician, ruthless, methodical, and above all, untouchable. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, is that I've spent my entire life operating under pressure, reading terrain, waiting, watching. I've been hunted before. I know the signs. And I know what comes next. She thinks this is a neighborhood squabble. She thinks she can push me until I break or leave. She's wrong. Teddy's not just a dog. He's not just a support animal. He's the one thing in this world that has kept me grounded, alive, and whole. And I'll be damned if I let her take him from me. It started with a sound, a sharp metallic pop from a delivery truck's exhaust, echoing down the quiet suburban street like a gunshot. I felt it before I even processed it, my shoulders tightening, chest locking up, breath freezing halfway to my lungs. The world dimmed, the edges going blurry. My heartbeat thudded somewhere behind my ears. Then came the nudge. Teddy pressed his body into my knee, firm and certain. His shoulder leaned just right, the exact pressure point we'd practiced for years. I didn't even have to ask. That's what he was trained to do. "Good boy," I whispered through clenched teeth as the panic ebbed. My vision sharpened. I could breathe again. He let out a single short bark, a signal, not aggression, not fear, just a warning. "I've got you, Dad. I'm here." But that one bark was all Karen Jordan needed. Her front door flew open like a storm. She charged out onto her manicured lawn with military precision, dressed in a pink floral blouse and her ever-present white visor, looking less like a neighbor and more like a general surveying a battlefield. "Jack Dalton!" she barked, voice slicing through the peaceful morning like a blade. "That animal is out of control." I turned slowly, still kneeling beside Teddy. He looked up at me, calm but alert, tail giving a soft thump against the sidewalk. "He's a service dog," I said, keeping my tone even. "He was startled by the noise, that's all." Karen's voice rose, theatrically loud now, clearly playing to the windows and curious eyes behind curtains. "He is a menace. This is not the first time, Mr. Dalton. He barked at my niece last month. He growled at a child during Halloween. He's a ticking time bomb." "That's not true," I said firmly. "He barked once, today. That's it." She stepped closer, wagging a finger in my face. "You're an unstable man with a dangerous dog, and I will not allow you to terrorize this neighborhood." I stood, slowly, towering over her. "Back off." "Karen." And that's when she saw them, the patrol car easing down the block. Officer Miller and Officer Sanchez. Routine sweep. Wrong place, wrong time. Karen's eyes lit up. She waved her arms like a stranded sailor, calling them over with performative panic. "Officers, officers, thank God you're here." The cruiser rolled to a slow stop. The two officers stepped out, their expressions already wary. They knew Karen, everyone did. Her file probably had its own drawer at the precinct. "What's going on here?" Miller asked, tired. "This man's animal just lunged at me," Karen exclaimed, clutching her chest like she'd survived a bear attack. "He's vicious, unpredictable. I want him registered as a dangerous animal immediately." I blinked. "That's a lie," I said, stepping in front of Teddy. "We were walking away. You confronted us." "He's frothing at the mouth," she shrieked. "He growled. He nearly bit me." Teddy sat behind me, head tilted in confusion, tongue out in a relaxed pant. The picture of calm. His tail thumped the grass once, still trying to be a good boy in a bad world. Sanchez sighed. "Ma'am, the dog is on a leash. He looks calm." "He's only calm now because you're here," Karen snapped. "He needs to be muzzled. Better yet, removed." And then, in a move so calculated, so stunning in its audacity, she made her play. While both officers turned to confer with each other, Karen reached into her handbag and pulled out a small silver canister. It looked innocuous, like hairspray. She stepped forward fast, too fast for me to react. Psst! A fine mist burst out of the nozzle. It hit Teddy square in the face. He yelped. The sound was primal, pain, confusion, betrayal. He stumbled back, rubbing his face against the sidewalk, paws frantically clawing at his eyes. His body thrashed in panic. That soft golden fur I brushed every night now twisted and twitching. My breath left me. I dropped to my knees beside him, hands moving on instinct. "Teddy! Hey! Hey, I'm here!" His eyes were already bloodshot. The smell hit me. Not citronella, something chemical, bitter, sharp, maybe ammonia, maybe worse. Behind me, the world tilted. "What did you just do?" I asked without turning, my voice low, ice forming around each syllable. Karen stood tall, canister still in hand. I defended myself. "It's just citronella spray. Perfectly harmless." "Harmless?" I echoed. "He's a service dog. That's assault." Officer Sanchez stepped in, alarm flashing across his face. "Sir, calm down. Please, let's take care of your dog." Miller reached for the can. "Ma'am, I need that." Karen hesitated, then reluctantly handed it over, her expression smug, as if she'd just won something. Miller sealed it in a bag, tagging it for evidence. His partner offered me saline from the cruiser's med kit. I flushed Teddy's eyes while holding his trembling body in my lap. He whimpered once, soft and questioning. "Why?" it said. "What did I do wrong?" I didn't have an answer. The officers wrote up a report. They told Karen to go back inside, told me to get Teddy home. No charges, no arrest, just another note in a file. A schoolyard squabble, they called it. But I knew better. This wasn't the end. It was a declaration. As I carried Teddy home, his body still shaking against my chest, I looked down the street, every house, every yard, and felt the shift. Karen had made her move, and if I knew anything from the war, it was that first blood always comes with a second wave. The orange sign went up the next morning. Dangerous animal on premises. Quarantine order. It was stapled to my front door like a scarlet letter. Neon orange, black block letters, nailed right into the heart of my sanctuary. The irony wasn't lost on me. The only dangerous thing in this house was the grief I kept buried behind locked doors. Teddy sat by the window, unmoving, his head resting between his paws. He hadn't eaten breakfast. He hadn't touched his toys. His golden fur still smelled faintly of whatever chemical Karen had sprayed in his face. I had bathed him twice, carefully avoiding his eyes. But the scent lingered, an ugly memory neither of us could rinse away. He didn't understand. To him, the world had just changed. People who used to smile now turned their backs. Dogs he used to greet now crossed the street. His walks, our ritual, our therapy, were gone. He whined softly, nudging his leash with his nose. I didn't have the heart to explain the rules to him again. "Not today, bud," I said, my voice rough. He circled twice, laid down by the door, and let out a long, low sigh. I knew how he felt. The phone rang once, then stopped. A neighbor who thought better of calling, maybe. My inbox pinged with a new email. HOA violation notice. $500 fine for public disturbance. Another for failure to restrain aggressive animal. They stacked like bricks. Small, sharp reminders that the community I had tried to trust had turned on me. Or worse, had never been mine to begin with. I walked to the window. The Millers across the street were gardening. They saw me. I know they did, but didn't wave. Mrs. Gable, who once brought over apple pie when I moved in, now rushed her garbage bin inside the moment I stepped outside. Even Duke, the grizzled guy who used to talk my ear off about property taxes, wouldn't make eye contact anymore. No one said a word, not in defense, not in protest. Just silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that screams louder than words. That night, as Teddy lay beside my bed, tail still, breath shallow, I found myself staring at the ceiling, hands clenched into fists. The tightness in my chest had returned, not panic, not fear, something colder, memory. It came in flashes, like always. The desert sun, blinding, the heat warping the air dot, the smell of diesel and dust. We'd just cleared a compound. My partner had radioed in an all clear. I was stepping outside when, boom, the blast swallowed everything. Sound, time, reality. When I woke up, there was blood in my mouth and a ringing in my ears that wouldn't go away for months. Rex, my dog back then, didn't survive the explosion, but I did. That's the cruel trick of trauma. It doesn't always take your life. Sometimes it leaves you just enough to wish it had. The nightmares came like clockwork. So did the meds and the drinking. There was a time I'd sit with a loaded pistol on the coffee table, staring at it like it was a conversation I wasn't ready to start. I didn't speak to anyone for 6 months. Then came Teddy. He wasn't part of the military. He didn't come with scars or stories. He just showed up with that soft, slobbery grin and sat beside me like he'd always belonged there. He didn't try to fix me. He didn't need to understand the weight I carried. He just stayed, quietly, steadily. That was enough. The night I had my last real panic attack, I remember collapsing in the hallway, gasping for air, fists in my hair. I remember Teddy pressing himself against my chest, anchoring me like a human life raft. I remember sobbing into his fur and whispering, "I'm still here. I'm still here." He made sure of that. Now, watching him curl up by the door, ears drooping, I felt a pain worse than any shrapnel wound. He thought he did something wrong, that his loyalty was a mistake, that he was the danger. I couldn't explain to him that people like Karen don't need a reason. They just need a target. By noon, a White County van pulled up outside. Animal control. My stomach flipped. A man in khaki stepped out, clipboard in hand. He looked exhausted, like this wasn't his first HOA-fueled dispute today. I met him on the porch before he knocked. "Mr. Dalton?" he asked, already glancing at the sign. "Yeah," I said flatly. "We received a report concerning your golden retriever." "From Karen Jordan," I said. He didn't answer, just read from the form. "The report claims your dog bit a child yesterday morning, before officers arrived." "There was no child," I said. "She claims the child was rushed home by the mother. An anonymous witness confirmed." "Who?" I demanded. "Name the witness." "Confidential," he replied, voice robotic. "It's standard protocol. Protocol based on lies." He sighed, rubbed his eyes. "I'm just doing my job. Based on the report, we're required to place the dog under quarantine for 10 days. Here? At your home, under strict conditions." He handed me another sign to place on the back door. Teddy came to the screen, tail thumping once, still hopeful. The officer hesitated. "Sir, I know what this looks like, but if you can prove this didn't happen, if you can find evidence, you might have a shot. There's a hearing coming up." I nodded once. He left. And I was alone again. Just me, Teddy, and a countdown. That night, I pulled an old box from the closet. Inside were medals I didn't display. Uniform patches, photos, Rex's worn-out collar. At the bottom, folded carefully, was a letter. It was written by a boy whose life we saved overseas. A simple thank you, no address, just 2 words in thick pencil. "Still here?" I read it twice, then looked at Teddy. "I don't care how many rules she's written," I whispered, placing my hand on his head. "I don't care how many fines she stacks. You're not going anywhere. Because the war might have ended years ago. But my mission just started. It came in a plain white envelope. No knock, no signature. Just a soft thump against my front door around noon, like someone couldn't even be bothered to face me. I opened it with trembling hands. A single page, stamped with the county seal. Notice of Emergency Destruction Review. Subject, Teddy, Golden Retriever. I read it 3 times before I could make sense of it. According to the report, Teddy had bitten a child during the incident on the curb. The same incident where 3 officers stood just feet away and saw nothing. The report claimed the child had been rushed home by a parent before the police arrived. Anonymous victim. Anonymous witness. And the deadline? 24 hours. If I didn't submit compelling evidence to dispute the claim within that window, the animal control supervisor had the authority to approve an emergency destruction order. They'd come. They'd take him. And he'd never come home again. I stood there, staring at the paper, my body cold with disbelief. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a hit, calculated, coordinated, designed to break me. And suddenly, everything made sense. The letters, the fake complaints, the setup with the police. Karen had been building a file, constructing a story. She wasn't trying to get rid of a dog. She was trying to erase me. A knock broke the silence. It was a uniformed officer, not Miller, someone I didn't recognize. He handed me another envelope. HOA Formal Violation Summary. 3 infractions. Harboring a dangerous animal. Creating a public nuisance. Verbally threatening the HOA president. Total fines. $1,250. Failure to pay within 10 days could result in lien placement, legal injunction, and foreclosure proceedings. They weren't just coming for Teddy. They were coming for my home, the house I bought with 20 years of service, the quiet I fought so hard to build, the safety Teddy helped me reclaim brick by brick. I looked at him, curled up on the couch, his eyes still cloudy from the spray, tail giving a half-hearted wag just for me. He didn't know. He didn't know that someone had just signed his death warrant. He didn't know that the people outside didn't see him as a companion or a hero or a healer, just a threat. But I knew, and for the first time in years, I felt the old switch flip, the one they trained into us, the one that separates men who hope from men who act. I walked into the bedroom, pulled the old footlocker from under the bed, and opened it. Inside were remnants of another life, a battered map case, a military-issue flashlight, my field notebook, a stack of dog tags, and a photograph of me kneeling beside Rex, one hand on his harness, both of us staring into the desert sun. I placed the photo face down and pulled out the notebook. Then I cleared the kitchen table. I started drawing a map. Karen's house, mine, the curb where it all happened, neighboring houses, sight lines, possible security cameras, witness angles. If there was proof, it existed, somewhere, and I would find it. I wasn't just going to save Teddy, I was going to bury the lie. At 3:47 p.m., I filed an official rebuttal online with Animal Control. I attached the original police report, no child mentioned. Attached photos of Teddy post-attack. The lab report hadn't come back yet on the spray, but I logged that too. It wasn't enough, not yet. So I made a list. Neighbors with visible doorbell cams, people who had line of sight to the incident, friendly faces who might talk, even the ones who'd gone silent, especially them. Fear was Karen's tool, but mine was discipline. By 5 o'clock, I was knocking on doors, calm, director, controlled. I kept it simple. Do you have video footage from the morning Teddy was accused? Most said no. A few didn't answer at all. Some lied to my face. I could see the fear in their eyes, not of me, but of her. They didn't want a letter in their mailbox, didn't want their new fence permit denied, didn't want their kid banned from the HOA pool. Karen ruled with paperwork and whispers, but I'd been up against warlords with actual weapons. Bureaucracy didn't scare me, not anymore. By nightfall, I'd gathered nothing, no footage, no statements, no help. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot. Teddy deserved better than silence. He deserved justice. And Karen Jordan. She deserved to know that the man she tried to silence had just remembered who he used to be. The last time I planned an operation, it was deep in Helmand Province. My unit had 6 hours to locate a weapons cache before it disappeared into the mountains. I had a drone feed, a team of 6, and the weight of 10 lives on my shoulders. Now, it was just me. But the pressure felt the same. The kitchen table became my command center. I had a rough sketch of the neighborhood spread out, notepad open beside it. Each house was labeled by sightlines and tech likelihood. Ring camera, Arlo, blink. I marked timestamps, reconstructed angles, calculated shadows. Everything from the moment Karen sprayed Teddy to the minute Animal Control showed up. But I was hitting a wall. The neighbors were afraid. Even the ones who wanted to help had a leash around their neck. HOA, permits, fines, threats. Karen didn't need loyalty. She just needed fear, and fear was winning. I stared down at my notes, half-formed ideas, unanswered questions. My fingertips tapped the edge of the table in rhythm. My breathing slowed. I needed air support. I grabbed my phone, scrolled to a name I hadn't dialed in almost a year. Marcus West. Last time we talked, he was building security infrastructure for a Fortune 500 company while simultaneously running a side hustle fixing surveillance for less-than-legal businesses. We served together in Iraq. He was our tech specialist. Could fly a drone through a ventilation shaft or jam a signal from 100 yards away. Back then, he used to say, "Information wins wars." Period. He answered on the second ring. "Dalton," he said, his voice crackling with dry amusement. "To what do I owe the honor? Did you finally figure out how to open that encrypted phone I sent you?" "I need a favor," I said. No pleasantries, no small talk. The smile dropped from his tone instantly. What's wrong? I laid it all out. The incident with Teddy, the fake bite report, the HOA violations, the emergency destruction order, the 24-hour clock. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was silence. Then, finally, he said, "This Karen lady, she's organized. She's tactical," I muttered. Too tactical. This whole thing's too clean. It's like it was planned before the bark ever happened. "She's not working alone," Marcus said. "Nobody pushes a case like that through channels in less than a day, unless someone's helping her move the paperwork." I sat back in the chair. I need to know how deep this goes. What's the HOA's name? Greenfield Meadows Homeowners Association. He gave a low whistle. Sounds like a prison with mailboxes. You have no idea. I heard typing on his end. Rapid, focused. Marcus was in his element now. Their site is running on a basic content management system. Zero encryption. It's like watching a toddler play with a loaded gun. How long do you need? Give me 20, maybe 30. Don't call anyone. Don't talk to anyone. If she has a friend in IT, they'll flag any weird activity. I'm offline, I said. Call me back when you're in. And then I waited. I couldn't sit still, so I cleaned the house, reorganized the garage, scrubbed Teddy's food bowls even though they were spotless. Teddy followed me around, head tilted, clearly picking up on my tension. He didn't understand the storm brewing, but he could feel it. 29 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Marcus didn't bother with a greeting. I'm in. What did you find? I searched outgoing email logs from their main account, the HOA board, and a few personal addresses linked to administrative actions. Guess who's been very, very busy in the last 48 hours? Karen, I said flatly. Oh yeah? She sent an internal email to her assistant, someone named Sarah Peters, exactly 2 hours after the incident on your street. Listen to this. He cleared his throat and read in a faux snooty tone. Sarah, I need you to draft a complaint to animal control immediately. We'll state that Dalton's golden retriever bit a child. Make the child anonymous, a visitor to the neighborhood, to avoid the need for actual records. Use the emergency protocol. I want that animal gone by the end of the week. My jaw locked. She wrote that? In email? I've got the metadata, timestamps, IP address, server logs. It's clean. And there's more. She CC'd 3 HOA board members on a follow-up chain, laying out her strategy. She even wrote the violation letter templates in advance and had the board rubber stamp them with a single reply. Sounds good, Karen. I ran a hand through my hair. Jesus. And the best part, Marcus added, the sworn witness statement that triggered animal control's escalation, the one claiming Teddy bit a child. It wasn't from a neighbor. I froze. Then who? It was Sarah, the assistant. Karen bullied her into it. The email chain shows Karen threatening her job. Literally says, "You work for me, and your job is to handle my problems. This is a problem." There it was, the smoking gun. You can forward all of that to me? I asked. I can, he said carefully, but if you use it, you're admitting I accessed their private server without authorization. That makes it inadmissible, and it makes me a felon. I closed my eyes. Damn it. He was right, but this wasn't useless, because while the emails weren't court safe, they told me where to look. Can you extract Sarah's personal contact? I asked. She has a separate Gmail for freelance work. I'll send it to you. But go easy. She's scared. If she flips, the whole thing crumbles. If she runs, we're back to zero. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. You're a damn ghost, Marcus. You're welcome, Dalton. Now go hunt. He hung up, and I stared down at the printed copy of Karen's email, my hands shaking. Teddy came to my side, pressing his head against my leg, grounding me, like always. I looked down at him, then back at the evidence in my hand. Karen Jordan had started a war she thought she'd already won. But she forgot one crucial thing about men like me. We only look quiet because we're planning. In war, timing is everything. You don't charge a fortified position at noon. You wait. You gather intel. You study your enemy, their routines, their blind spots, their tells. Karen Jordan wasn't a general. She just liked playing one, but she'd grown complacent, arrogant, She thought the fear she planted would grow forever, but all it needed was one crack. That crack came in the shape of a little white dog. It was late afternoon when I spotted the gate swinging open behind Karen's house. Sarah, her assistant, had just arrived in her gray sedan. I recognized her from the neighborhood, always quiet, always moving like she was late for something. The dog, a small, fluffy bichon named Alfie, bolted through the gate, leash dragging behind him. At first, I didn't think much of it. Then I saw the delivery van barreling down the street, the driver checking his GPS instead of the road. "Alfie!" Sarah shouted, phone clutched to her ear. He didn't hear her, but I moved. I leapt the low fence without thinking, boots landing hard on the pavement. 3 strides later, I scooped Alfie into my arms just as the van screeched past. Maybe 2 feet from impact. The driver cursed, slamming on the brakes too late. Alfie shook in my arms, a bundle of panic and fluff. Sarah ran up, breathless, eyes wide. "Oh my God," she gasped. "He could have, I've got him," I said, passing the trembling pup into her arms. She held Alfie close, sinking to the curb. "I can't believe you just, after everything, after what I did." Her voice broke. "Why would you save him?" I knelt beside her. "Because he didn't deserve to be hurt, and neither does mine." She looked up at me, tears welling. The wall she'd built, to survive, to comply, began to crack. "She made me do it," she whispered. "Karen." She said if I didn't sign the report, I'd lose my job, my health insurance, my mom's sick. "I know," I said gently. "I've seen the emails." Her eyes widened, but she didn't deny it. Just looked down at Alfie, then back at me. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to tell the truth," I said. "Not for me, not even for Teddy, for yourself." Silence stretched between us, then she nodded. Just once. That was all I needed. The HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the community clubhouse. Officially, the agenda was community safety and pet policy review. Unofficially, it was Karen's stage. She wanted a final performance, a public flogging. One last push to bury me under the weight of the rules she twisted into weapons. What she didn't know was that I had rewritten the script. I called Marcus. "Change of plans," I said. "I've got the witness." He let out a long breath. "Finally. You're turning her own weapon against her." "I need backup, tech support. Can you get the stream online?" "I'll bring the gear and the circus," he said. "See you at 0 hour." At 6:15 p.m., my internet cut out. I stepped outside to find the cable had been sliced clean at the wall. Subtle, Karen. Marcus rolled up at 6:30 with Marty, a ham radio operator and neighborhood oddball who looked like he'd built a satellite array in his trunk. "Got signal?" I asked. Marty grinned. "Sir, I bring signal where signal fears to tread." 10 minutes later, a backup hotspot was broadcasting a private live stream to Marcus's server. He had already pinged 3 local journalists and a non-profit animal welfare group. "The world's watching," he said. We walked into the clubhouse at 6:59 on the dot. There were about 30 people inside, some curious, some annoyed, some clearly there just to avoid HOA fines. Karen sat at the front with her usual lieutenants. Mr. Balloon Man and Mrs. Permanent Scowl. She spotted me. Her smile flickered. Then she saw Marcus set his phone on a tripod near the back. She went pale. Karen slammed the gavel. "This emergency session of the Greenfield Meadows HOA is now in order," she announced. "We are here to address the ongoing threat posed by a dangerous animal, one which has endangered residents and children alike." She turned to me. "Mr. Dalton, your presence is permitted, but you will not disrupt these proceedings." I stood calmly. "I don't intend to, but I do intend to speak, and I think the community deserves to hear the truth, especially about this alleged child my dog supposedly attacked." Karen blinked. "There are confidentiality protocols." "Then allow me to call a witness." A murmur rippled through the room as Sarah stood up near the back. Karen's face turned to stone. "Sarah," she said, voice strained, "I don't know what you think you're—" "I'm telling the truth," Sarah said, voice shaking but clear. "There was no child. There was no bite. I was there. I saw everything. Jack Dalton's dog was leashed and calm. Karen sprayed him without cause. Then she ordered me to file a false report. She wrote it herself. She said, we need to get rid of that animal. He's a liability. The room went silent. Karen stood slowly. She's lying. She's a disgruntled employee. Then explain this, Marcus said, holding up his phone. The stream's live, by the way. 500 people watching, including local press. He tapped the screen. Karen's email lit up the monitor behind him. Her words, her timestamps, her orders. Karen's hands trembled. You can't use that. That's illegal. But her statement isn't, I said, holding up Sarah's sworn affidavit. Signed, notarized, filed. The room erupted. People who'd once been silent were now whispering, then shouting. The Millers looked horrified. Even Duke, old crusty Duke, stared at Karen like she'd just kicked his dog. Karen tried to walk out, but Mrs. Gable stood up. You made my granddaughter cry over a wind chime, she said. Karen froze. You fined me $500 because my shed wasn't painted beige. You humiliated people for years. It ends tonight. Karen turned, stunned. The door behind her closed, blocked. She was surrounded, stripped of power, exposed, and for the first time, she looked like what she truly was, small. The meeting dissolved into noise, but I didn't stay to watch her fall apart. I walked outside. The air was cool, the sky turning soft with twilight. And for the first time in weeks, it felt like I could breathe. The counterattack had landed. The tide had turned. The morning after the meeting, I opened the front door to find a news van parked across the street. 2 reporters leaned against the hood, drinking gas station coffee, scanning their phones. One of them looked up, recognized me, and gave a small nod. I gave one back and closed the door. Inside, Teddy was waiting, his head tilted, ears perked as if to ask, "Are we free now?" I knelt and wrapped my arms around him. "You did good, buddy," I whispered into his fur. "We did good." That afternoon, Animal Control officially lifted the quarantine order. I got the call from a supervisor with a tone that was equal parts embarrassed and apologetic. "Mr. Dalton," she said, "we've received a notarized affidavit from your witness, as well as video documentation of the HOA meeting. We are voiding the destruction request. Your dog is fully cleared. No further action will be taken." I almost dropped the phone. "And the woman who filed the false report?" I asked. "We've forwarded the case to the district attorney," she replied. "They're reviewing it under felony perjury and animal cruelty statutes." I thanked her and hung up. Teddy barked once, just once, then trotted to the window, watching the world like it finally belonged to him again. Later that week, I stood before a small claims court judge, flanked by a pro bono attorney the new HOA board had connected me with. Sarah sat in the front row, hands folded neatly in her lap, calm for the first time since I'd met her. Karen wasn't so lucky. Her eyes were hollow. Her lawyer stammered through a defense that fell apart the moment the judge saw the emails and the stream footage. The judge's verdict was swift. "All HOA sanctions and fines levied against Mr. Dalton are nullified," she said, her voice cold. "This court further awards damages for emotional distress and seeks criminal referral for abuse of power and false reporting." Karen didn't look at me, not once. She just sat there, unraveling. She resigned from the HOA that evening. By the end of the week, both of her board cronies followed. By Monday, the Greenfield Meadows Homeowners Association had been dissolved pending reorganization. The neighborhood felt lighter. People talked more. Front doors opened, lawns weren't as obsessively measured, wind chimes returned. Even Duke came by with a plate of store-bought cookies and a mumble. "Was wrong about the mutt," he said. "He's a hell of a dog." I took the cookies. I didn't hold grudges, only memories. The new HOA formed 2 months later, elected fairly, led by residents who'd watched Karen abuse power for years and finally decided silence was no longer safety. It was complicity. Their first act, an official letter of apology addressed to me, signed by every member. Their second, a check, the full amount awarded by the court, plus a donation to a local veteran service dog program. In the check memo line, someone had written in cursive, "For Teddy, who reminded us what loyalty looks like. The community had started to heal, so had I. A month later, the town held a small ceremony at the local park. It was simple, just a gathering of neighbors, a few folding chairs, a city councilman who spoke too long, news cameras that drifted in and out. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the moment when the mayor bent down and slipped a ribbon over Teddy's neck, a custom medal engraved with 3 words, Civilian Service Hero. The crowd applauded. Teddy blinked up at me, confused but proud, tail thumping. Then the mayor pulled a cord, and a cloth fell away to reveal a wooden sign, the new name of the park, Teddy's Park. People cheered, some clapped, a few wiped tears. Marty, the radio guy, lifted his walkie-high and announced, KMRT to base, mission complete, requesting belly rubs. Laughter broke the tension. Even Sarah laughed, a sound that had been missing from her for too long. Later that evening, I walked Teddy down our street. No leash, just a calm stroll the way we used to. The sun was low. The air smelled like blooming jasmine. For the first time since all this began, I didn't look over my shoulder. I didn't brace for a letter, didn't flinch at a neighbor's glance. Teddy padded along beside me, occasionally stopping to sniff a mailbox, tail high. At the edge of the park, we stopped. I sat on a bench. He laid his head on my leg. And for a long while, we just stayed there, not in fear, but in peace. The kind you don't inherit, the kind you fight for, the kind you earn. The sun was dipping low, casting long golden streaks across the freshly cut grass of Teddy's park. We walked the loop slowly, taking our time. No leash, no fear. Just me and him, like it used to be before the world tried to tell us we didn't belong. The new wooden sign creaked gently in the breeze. Someone had placed a small bouquet of daisies at its base, tied with a blue ribbon. On the card, a child's handwriting read, "Thank you, Teddy." He didn't understand the words, but when we stopped and I pointed at the sign, he wagged his tail and looked up at me with those same loyal eyes. Eyes that never once asked why, only what next. We found our favorite bench near the tree line, the same one where I used to sit and count my breaths when the noise in my head got too loud. Teddy hopped up beside me, pressed into my side, and rested his head on my lap like he always did. I scratched behind his ear, and we just listened to the wind, the leaves, the distant sound of a child laughing. Life uninterrupted. A month ago, I was preparing to lose everything, my home, my peace, my dog, and now here I sat, surrounded by the echoes of what we'd built together, not just survival, but something better, something earned. I looked down at the medal hanging loosely from his collar. It had shifted a bit, crooked and shiny in the sunset light. He didn't know it was a symbol of victory, didn't know that dozens of neighbors, a city council, and even a judge had come together to honor him. All he knew was that I was calm now, and that meant he'd done his job. My fingers traced the edges of the ribbon, and that question, the one that had haunted me since this all began, rose back into my mind, quiet and steady. How far will a man go to protect his own? Far enough to challenge the rules, far enough to be hated, lied about, isolated. Far enough to dig through darkness, to find the truth, to stand alone until someone else is brave enough to stand with him. Far enough to be called dangerous, because he refused to let someone he loved be hurt. That's how far. The thing about people like Karen is, they don't just attack what's loud, they attack what's different, what's quiet, what doesn't fit the mold. And the thing about dogs like Teddy is, they never stop loving you, even when the world tells them they shouldn't. He saved me from a war I never left, and when the world turned on him, I finally did what he'd been doing for me all along. I fought back, because loyalty doesn't bark, it doesn't bite, it just stays, through the worst of it. And sometimes, that's all we need to survive. Have you ever fought for someone who couldn't speak for themselves? Tell us in the comments, because sometimes, justice begins with a single bark and someone willing to listen.